So today we're going to do a season preview for Orlando City, who this season, there's no doubt that there's a lot of expectation for this team. I mean, last season, after it was kind of a step forward and two step back, after their minor setback of only finishing in sixth place in the Eastern Conference and getting knocked out in the first round, there's no doubt that this season they're looking to try to rectify that and try to finish in the top half of the table and also go much more deeper into the playoffs. Now, last season they finished with a record of 13, 12, and 9 and finished with 51 points. They scored 50 goals last season, and this is actually a surprising number considering last season this team had a lot of trouble in terms of goal scoring, and the fact that despite that they still were able to finish with 50 goals, it's kind of impressive of how that of course is the case. Now, in terms of the goal allowed that they had 48 goals conceded last season, and again, that's also a surprising number, but in a way where I thought that feels a little bit too high considering this Orlando City defense at time were one of the best defense in the league. So again, this is one of the rare times where the numbers and the stats doesn't actually implement how the team is, but overall they did finish with a goal differential of +2 and they finished 6th in the Eastern Conference. Now, but besides them finish 6th in 2021, in 2020 they had their best season in franchise history, finishing in 4th place and finally making the playoffs for the first time in their franchise history. But before that, it was really the dark days of this franchise history, with them finishing in 11th in 2019, finished 11th again in 2018. In fact, in 2018 they actually finished dead last in the Eastern Conference, and then they finished second from bottom in 2017 in 10th place. Now, in terms of some of the transfer that they made, well, they definitely spent money this offseason, and one of the big acquisitions that they made this offseason is getting Facundo Torres from Pinero. And originally the price tag was going to be somewhere upward about $10 million. Eventually that got a little bit less, which you got to credit this Orlando City front office, the fact that they can turn a player that looked like is going to be at least eight figures in terms of transfer fee, and just brought it down to $7.5 million. That's definitely to a credit to this Orlando City front office in terms of signing a good player, but not at the original amount that it was projected. Now, that being said, $7.5 million is still a lot of money, but it could have been a lot more, and they still kind of got a little bit of a net gain in terms of the Daryl DK sell that they had this offseason, which we'll talk a little bit more about that. They also got Cesar Araujo, a central defensive mid from Uruguay from Wanderers. Then they found their number 9 to replace Daryl DK in Akron Kara from Rapid Vienna. They also signed Nathan Dos Santos and Jack Lynn from the Super Draft. Now, in terms of players that they lost this offseason, obviously the biggest name is Daryl DK going to West Brom from $9.5 million. They also lost Chris Mueller, but we kind of knew that from the beginning of last season because he had a pre-contract signed with Hibernian that he's going to be joining the Scotch team right after the season ends, and that is the case. They of course also lost Nani, who actually went to Valencia, and I'm hearing that he's also doing a very good thing with that team in Syria. They also lost Emmanuel Mas, who they signed him on loan and decided not to purchase him outright. So he's going to be going back to Argentina and going to Estudiante. They lost Oro Rossell, who's going to be going back to Sporting KC. And then the other player that they lost are players that are just more like depth pieces that they lost. Nothing major. In terms of the players that they lost this offseason. So you got David Larrea going to San Antonio FC, Raul Aguilera going to Indy 11, Rio Horgan going to Loudoun United, Alexander Alviado going on loan with LDU Quito, and then the two free agent are Jordan Bender and Derek Dodson still in the free agency market. Now, in terms of optimism for this Orlando City team, well, there's a lot of optimism in terms of the attack, of the fact that, it's kind of almost like a new era for this Orlando City team on the attack. I mean, gone are the days when you have DK, Mueller, and Nani going forward, and now it seems like it's a new era where you got Facundo Torres, and presumably, I think Kara is going to be the guy that's going to lead the line. I mean, there is a sense that Pato could also lead the line too, but it depends on how Oscar Pereira wants to play, or maybe he might go with two striker up front too. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting with this new fresh attacking core. How is this Orlando City team is going to do? But there are definitely some excitement because of that. And this is also probably the best Orlando City team that is constructed. I mean, when you look at this team on paper, I think it's just slightly better than the 2020 team that they assembled, and that was the first year when Oscar Pereira took over this team. And yeah, I expect this should be once again a very fun team to watch, and a team that has a lot of expectation of finishing near the top half of the table. Now, that being said, going into the concern about this team, that's where, there isn't really a lot of concern I think Orlando City fans have with this team. But if there is one big concern that they will have, is the expectation. I mean, anytime when a team does have a lot of expectation, more times or not, teams might not live up to their expectation and potential. I mean, unless you're not named the Seattle Sounders, whenever you face hefty the expectation, there's times that they might many teams might not be able to meet, and that's kind of the case for this team. Can they live up to that expectation to be a top 4 team? And especially, this also goes the same with the attack too. Like I talked about the new attack and how it's going to be better there than the last one. Well, we shall see about that, because they haven't really played with each other on a competitive match yet, and that there's a lot of pressure for these guys to perform, and especially for their big money movement for Facundo Torres. He's going to have a lot of pressure. A guy that he's only 20 years old. He's still a really young player, but when you come out of a club that produced the likes of Diego Rossi and Brian Rodriguez, and you're coming to MLS to expect to be a decent player and hit the ground running, yeah, there's going to be a lot of pressure for him to live up to that potential and live up to the price tag that Orlando City pay a record amount to get him. Not a lot of depth at the back, so the depth chart of this team is pretty good in most position. And I would say this is kind of also a little bit of a nitpick in terms of what I said about this being the depth. Not a lot of depth, because when you look at the back, they do have a decent some depth in terms of this team, though. It doesn't hurt for them to maybe add another defender or another fullback. I mean, I think the fullback position is where they maybe lack a little bit of depth rather than in the center back position. But that's something that I think they'll address either down the line here with a couple of weeks before the season start, or during the summer transfer window. And then the last concern, again, I'm kind of nitpicking a little bit by saying that can Pato at least play 70% of the season. I mean, again, we know that he's going to probably get injured again this season. I mean, it's inevitable with Alexandre Pato. He always at least get injured in part of the season, but it would be nice for him to at least play majority of the season, though. Again, the pressure of him missing games is not going to be as much as what we saw last season with Orlando City, because they at least have a good backup option, or actually not really a backup option, but kind of their main man in Kara leading the line, and in case if Pato can't start, the only thing is they just lose a little bit depth in terms of that forward position. Now, in terms of MVP for this Orlando City team, I mean, I was very tempted to go with Facundo Torres, but I'm still going to go with Maurizio Pereira. I mean, he is the guy that is the heart and soul of this team in terms of the attack. I mean, he's the playmaker, and you notice the trend by now that anytime when I choose an MVP of the team, it's usually the number 10, because I've said many times before on this channel how the number 10 position is just probably the most important position on the field, and that you need to have a good number 10 that can pull the string and orchestrate the attack, and that's exactly what Maurizio Pereira can do. Now, the other thing that I will also say that I probably should have also put on the concern is the fact that can Maurizio Pereira stay healthy, because he's been been injury prone in these last couple of seasons ever since he's joined this team. But when he's healthy, this Orlando City attack can definitely be clicking. Now, in terms of comeback player, as I'm going to actually switch to another pen because that black one didn't really have a lot of ink. I'm gonna go with Moutinho, who of course is coming back from. I think it was a knee injury that kind of kept him out the majority of the season, and that there's no doubt that coming back from this season he's probably going to be a starter and a guy that we know that he has a lot of talent. I mean, he's still relatively young, but he has a lot of potential to be one of the best full backs in the league, and yeah, I think he's going to show that this season coming back from injury and hopefully stay off the IR table too, because he's another guy that has been a little bit injury prone in these last couple of seasons. Now, expectation for this Orlando City team. So I mentioned before, there is a lot of big expectation for this team. They need to, of course, at least make top four in the Eastern Conference. I mean, you just feel like anything but besides top four is going to be a huge disappointment for this team. Consider how good this team is, and I know the Eastern Conference is relatively stacked this year, and it's going to be tough to try and to get themselves to the top four position. But when you look at their squad compared to the other squad in the Eastern Conference, even the top tier team, it's almost identical, and it's pound for pound to be almost similar in terms of quality. So yeah, they need to of course be a top four team if they want to live up to expectation, and also make sure you beat those team, because that was also one of the big issue with this team, where a lot of the reason why a lot of people didn't give Orlando City a lot of credit is because they tends to only able to win against the lesser opponent. Now, obviously, when you play against lesser opponents, you of course have to win against them, and they did a good job in terms of that. But when you want to be a team that is an MLS Cup contender, or a team that want to go deep into the playoffs, when you do face against your MLS Cup contender rival in the regular season, you also need to win those to send a message to the rest of the league that you are definitely a cup contender. And that's what Orlando City lacked last season. They always struggle whenever they play against good team, and this season that's going to be something that they need to do. They want to finish top four in the East. And then lastly, again, MLS Cup contender. Like, this team has the pieces to win MLS Cup, and we'll see whether or not if they can do so for this upcoming season. But yeah, there you have it. That is pretty much it for my season preview of Orlando City. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think of this video? And if you're an Orlando City fan, what's your optimism, your concern, and your expectation heading into this upcoming season? But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time.